You've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to bring me happy.
A captain's log, a beginning. Often a star date is a Starfleet protocol. Well, on this date, here on our captain's log, we proudly provide you with a permanent record of where you've been, what happened on the way, and what you've done with your half hour to get the latest interviews and news and our points of views on Star Trek.
I'd also add our logs have a Genesis effect.
Yes.
To begin a grand adventure into the unknown each week. He's Brian Kreutz, I'm Lily Fox-Lim. This is just one of many A Captain's Log episodic endeavors to become more human. Unlike Mr. Data. We're already human, but part of that human curiosity is getting to know aliens, makeup, auditions, actors, and all their stories surrounding Star Trek before and after that got them into this universe.
Yes, because I love the interviews here, right, Lily? If you could add just one thing to your daily episodic viewing of Star Trek, particularly because many episodes are character-driven, what would that be?
I would want to watch a character actor interview, of course. And this is just the place for that, wouldn't you know? Yes,
love it. One-of-a-kind interviews in long form are best found here.
We're biased, but in a good way. Boldly going beyond the bounds of the Star Trek interview guests here on your favorite show, talking, trekking, and telling stories.
Reaching past the galaxy's barrier to a familiar set of two look-alike characters in Mordock and Mendon, we're interviewing beyond the bounds of Benzite as we know it, with a long-form list of stories in part one of our two-part interview with John Putch.
Putch is full of stories, so let's tee this up before we get to the news. The Totem Pole Playhouse in South Central Pennsylvania was nicknamed the Cadillac of Summer Theaters. Putch was a theater actor, director, and producer at the theater for 30 years.
Wow.
Cool stories, including more Star Trek with him.
Oh, reaching before Kirk's Enterprise was Captain Christopher Pike and his adventures in the Star Trek Strange New World Season 3 coming up. The premiere will be on Paramount Plus, and that'll be later this month, or possibly maybe a little bit later this year. But we're coming off a cliffhanger from Season 2 that you and I were just talking about before the takes of this show, resolving a face-off against a formidable Gorn. The Enterprise has been ordered to retreat from Admiral Robert April's orders, but Pike wants to save his crew, and he's really not retreated yet.
No, and the Gorn capture several of Pike's Enterprise senior staff in that finale, which is scary. But a teaser into not spoiling it all for Season 3 reveals the Enterprise is set for a collision course ram into the Gorn ship as shields fail at 20%. But we hope everyone is rescued. But also we know the Gorn placed eggs inside of Pike's girlfriend, Captain Marie Patel, and she's quarantined in sickbay. Will she survive a Gorn birth of sorts inside her with these internal eggs?
Oh, teasers of all three Season 3 teasers, Lils. Yes, watch the wonderful world of destructive collision courses, crew rescues, and Gorns inside the girlfriend on Paramount Plus for Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Hey, welcome back to A Captain's Log. To say John Putch was born to be in front of the camera is a definitive understatement and is more complex. Now, Putch has appeared in over 70 productions as an actor and slightly more as a director behind the camera.
Yes, John Putch is known to us Star Trek fans with a friendly and familiar face from Seasons 1 and 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation as two alien blue-skinned Benzites from the same geostructure as lookalikes. Let's open a channel welcoming John Putch to A Captain's Log.
So good to be here. I finally got here. It's amazing. Appreciate you having me. Here we go.
So, John, let me ask you the first question. Is it safe to say that your family had a big impression on you getting into acting and directing? Because your mother is Emmy Award winner Jean Stapleton, known for the iconic TV series All in the Family. Your father, William Putch, appeared in the ABC TV network episode series 3 times called Family, and was a theater director. Now, what are your earliest memories of acting on stage and then doing TV and film?
Well, my father, you know, he just acted on the side when he wasn't running his theater, which was a summer theater, which is seasonal. we'd all be out in California, while mom did All in the Family. So and that's how I got involved in television. But yeah, being a theater guy, he used to be an actor when he was young, and then he went to college, and then he became a theater producer extraordinaire and director. So his basically the whole family worked at that theater. My mom was in the plays even before they got married. She was working there, and then when my sister and I were born, 5 years later, we were thrust on stage. Uh, you know, Dad would put us on, in the musicals if he needed kids in the chorus or something, and we thought it was great fun. And that's sort of how I got into show business, because I had a theater dad and an actress mother, and we just sort of like that's how we grew up. So instead of the sheet metal business or whatever that some people may have in their family, we had a legitimate summer stock theater. So it was fun, and I never thought of doing anything else. And so acting at this theater was a magical experience, and growing up there. So I went from like a 5-year-old kid in a musical in the 60s to like the leading man, or the young, romantic lead in the plays by the time I was in college. And it was just the most magical and fantastic place to learn. And a lot of integrity in this theater and in the theater itself. So when you come to California and you start working in television, you're looking around going, wait a second, people aren't always nice. They're not for the show. They're in it for themselves. It was a huge culture shock. So anyway, that's how I started out. And just to tell anybody who's interested, the how I became a filmmaker is this same father of mine that was so important in my life handed me a Super 8 camera when I was, I don't know, 12 or 13 years old, and he said, "Here, take this and go make some movies, and with your friends, and I'm going to show you how to edit them, and then I want you to show them to us, when you're finished." And that's how it all started. I became fascinated with film and editing, and stories. And since my parents had just an unlimited supply of actor friends, I'm casting my parents' professional actor friends in my Super 8 movies. When I'm a kid, I'm in high school. I got the guy from Picture of Dorian Gray, for God's sakes, Herb Hatfield is in one of my movies. I got, and then later as I'm getting older and I'm on my own, I got my friends, my own actor friends. I have Helen Hunt in my Super 8 movies. I have, all these people, and just super, super fun. And that's how, and I just kept going with that as a passion, and continued as an actor, because I wedged my way into acting and television when we were out there, and I was able to make get inroads as an actor on TV, had some success, and then I was able to pimp myself out as a director, and I made many short films, 16 millimeters, spent a lot of actor money on that stuff, and then got a break in the mid 90s, got a break directing a kids movie. And that's how it all started.
Well, later we'll get to your directing. So let's talk about the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You've amassed dozens of acting credits in One Day at a Time, Family Ties, Seinfeld, Room for Two, and Home Improvement, to name a few. Give us a glimpse into some of those, with a cool story about how you progressed through Hollywood, first as a child actor and then into adulthood.
By the time I got to junior high and high school in California, I had already been on television, and I'd done like maybe, I don't know, 15 plays, and so I had experience. So even though I took the drama class in high school and everything, I was actually also working at the time on One Day at a Time, which was my first recurring role on a major sitcom. And I was I kind of was already an actor, as they say. But it was, I did a lot of comedies back then. They were all sitcoms because I was a theater guy, and theater people, unless someone pulls you aside and says, hey, you don't have to play to the back of the room, the back of the theater, when they didn't have microphones. You literally just have to convince the person in the scene and talk like you're next to them. I went, oh, if someone had done that, I probably would have gotten into dramas more often, but nobody did. So because of that, I was the sitcom guy, and you know how they are. In front of a live audience, I Love Lucy style, All in the Family, One Day at a Time style, and you're playing for the laughs, and you're bigger, everything's larger. So I did a lot of that stuff, and it wasn't until like it clicked one day when I was watching some dramatic show or something, and I went, they're not acting like I've been taught, And so I started to adapt a different style, and it started getting me regular, dramatic roles, and I worked quite a bit in the 80s. The 70s was just the One Day at a Time show and Family Ties, and and it broke into the 80s and stuff. And I was doing pretty good in the 80s, and that's when I started farting around with the directing and making films, 16 millimeters, and trying to jump into TV, because I looked around at the TV situation and I went, I could do this, and this is fun, and it goes quick. There's not a lot of, time wasted, and I like that. I like to go fast. And so that's when I started my little, I'm gonna maybe take that and try to angle my sights on that. But I enjoyed growing as a youngster into more adult roles, and but I still remained the same kind of character, similar to the one I played in the second Next Generation, the Matter of Honor episode, where I was I play this character quite a bit in my career, the nudnik, the guy that's like, he's a little tight in the shorts, and he likes to needle people, and that's somehow the kind of character I would always play, which was the sidekick usually. So, but I did enjoy that. And then when I got the Jaws 3D movie, which was a big deal for a kid, 20-year-old guy, I thought I thought everything was gonna just change, and my life would change. And then of course it didn't. It was like a big big flop. But so I just was working man actor. So, and I'd jump from, show to show. Once in a while, I'd get a series. Sometimes I'd get a recurring, or even, I rarely I did a lot of pilots that didn't sell. So, it was fun, but I was making little movies on the side the whole time.
Now, auditioning for Star Trek The Next Generation, by the time Star Trek The Next Generation arrived in 1987, I understand you already knew casting director Junie-Lowry Johnson, who we've seen her name in the credits so many times. Now, tell us about this connection, and also how this role Mordock came about, with you eventually landing the character before hitting the sound stages and being on set.
Junie-Lowry Johnson, and before she was Johnson, I knew her as Junie-Lowry, was the sister of the very prolific and successful TV director Dick Lowry. And I did a TV movie with my mom called Angel Dusted in 1981. And I won the part of the troubled, college kid who was on Angel Dust, and they had to put him in the detox, and the troubled college kid TV movie. And Arthur Hill was the dad. Helen Hunt was my sister. Ken Michelman was my brother from The White Shadow. And it was Percy Rodriguez was in it, who's a Star Trek name. He played a doctor, and it was a big deal. So Junie was Dick Lowry's assistant on the show, and we became friends. And then as time in the years went by, June started casting his movies with Pam Polifrone, and they did all the Gambler movies, and before you know it, it was Junie and Pam were, working together, and then Junie broke off on her own, and then she became the huge thing that she is. So that's how I know Junie. Now, as you're going along as a friend and an actor, and she is many in the town, whenever she gets a show or a gig, she's bringing in all her favorite actors. I happen to be one of them, thankfully, and and that's how I came in to read. And it's back in the 80s, you'd go, like, if you were a working actor, which I am lucky to say I was, you'd go on maybe 2 auditions a day for every show out there and running. And you'd read, you'd see the same people reading for your part, the same types, and it was quite a community, and it wasn't as large as it is now. It was like there was a group of actors that you saw every single time, and then sometimes they'd get the job, you'd see it on TV, and you'd go, oh, my so and so got that one. I'm so glad they got that job. Or other times they'd go, I would have been better in this, So that's what it was like. But so June brings everybody in that she likes actor-wise. Thankfully, I was one of them. So that's when I came in to read. And you're in Paramount in one of those great old buildings, with the long hallway and the stinky carpet, really old, stucco building. And, we're lined up down the hall, and there's all of us, there's guys, there's gals, they're reading for all the parts. And, you've got your pages. They wouldn't let you read the script even back then because it was such a secret, season 1 of that show had to be. And they gave me, they give you a description of the character, what he or she does in the show, and and that kind of like what happens, and then they give you the pages, and you try to figure out, oh, okay, this is, and because that show was so A, B, and C storyline-esque, you literally every time like Mordock showed up, you'd pretty much you'd get the complete idea. Scene 1, you'd know who everyone was. Scene 2, oh, here they're doing this now. Scene 3, so you kind of could figure it out. But they explained that I was a Benzite and I was from a water planet in the the description, and that was about it. I mean, and then it was just up to you to come up with something when you go in, and I went right to the, hey, I'm going to do part C3PO, part Anthony Edwards, and not Anthony Daniels, and part, my normal, this other guy I do when I was doing farces at Totem Pole, the theater that my dad ran. So that's what I did, the slightly fastidious guy, but you're a monster and you don't know what you're going to look like. So whenever you read for any kind of alien back in those days for Star Trek, it is just the presumption that you can't be like James Dean or Marlon Brando or any the actors theater people. You have to have some. You're an alien, so what do? So that's what I did. If you brought Andrew Dice Clay in to read for Mordock, the guy wouldn't get the job because he just can't. He can't be the, So you have to try something else. You just can't be that guy. So you have to be something, strange and unique and maybe, a little tight in the rear. That's what I did. It worked. Just a comparison to what they, when you read for something and you try to create something. So
let's get to playing your first role on Star Trek The Next Generation in season 1. You're playing the first Benzite character ever. You have a completely blank slate when researching and portraying the role. Was there a specific direction from director Mike Vehar? Like, did he give you any pointers as if you may have been a more seasoned and older hopeful Starfleet candidate because you've come up with this Mordock strategy that Wesley refers to? Tell us your approach with this brand new alien species and what helped you in your blank slate mode for playing this character Mordock.
When you're standing next to Wil Wheaton, everybody looks old, even with a blue head. I mean, he was the sweetest kid. I mean, I don't think we might be slightly maybe 5 or 6 years off in age, maybe. I don't know. But no, no one said anything about age to me. And Mike Vihar, bless his heart, I did a pilot for him, like for Disney with Michael McKean, I think a couple years later, which was so nice. And he was really cool, really direct and straightforward and simple. And but I don't recall being. I remember him coming up and going. I'd check with him. I'd say, "Oh, is this going how you guys want it?" And he goes, "Absolutely. Keep going with that." And then he would dial me in to, he would bring out little extra things in me when he needed. But I was under neoprene and foam, and I was so uncomfortable. All I wanted to do was like rip it off my head. And so I was really, really, it was not relaxing, mainly because of the appliance. So I might have blocked out, the answer to your question, but I remember Mike Vihar. I love that guy. And then later we did Double Agent for Disney, and had a great time. And he was great on that. That guy did a lot of TV. If you looked him up, I mean, we're talking, Fall Guy and everything else. He did so much episodic television. I mean, he was, one of those guys that just did everything.
Now, there's a few scenes in Coming of Age, even when the first scene, Wesley walks over to you by yourself, where I don't know if this is like a sound effect or if it's your timely acting to make this heavy nasal breathing sound and to insinuate a form of air breathing through that apparatus on your Starfleet uniform. But is this you, or was this done in post-production with sound effects? And can you tell us about this Crystal's vapor breathing apparatus?
I don't know. What you're describing sounds like my disapproval, or my, I might have done a, kind of thing as part of the character, because I don't even remember the scene, but I know I talked to him. And we were in competition, so it's possible I was being rude to him, and I was just doing a PFFFT type of a sound, Yeah. That's what it sounds like you're describing. So maybe that was it. I don't know if they enhanced it in post. I'd have to watch it and listen to it again. There wasn't much post enhancing back then. I mean, they'd bring you in and do your lines, and they'd make you do your efforts. They call them efforts. Mm-hmm. Whenever there's a grunt, an exhale, or something, while they have you in there, they have you cover all that. I know there's loop groups and everything, and they do it when you can't get somebody in there. But I'm not sure. I can't. I don't know. But it sounds to me like I was just doing a disapproving, out of, which also got me a puff onto the ice crystal thing, the tray. The character had that apparatus that came up with the little, looked like a denture holder. And I remember the prop guy, Alan, dropping little ice crystals in, so dry ice. And, whenever I breathed on it, it would give a bit of a puff. There was no digital. They didn't have money for that digital effect. They were spending it all on the space shots. So I had to, I had to try to puff, and the camera guys were coming over to me constantly saying, "Hey, can you make that thing puff, right? Now that we're on your close up, and can you make that puff more?" And I go, "Well, I can't puff while I'm talking." I said, "I can do it." I said, let me add some, I can do it when I'm listening, and I can do it like after a line or before a line, but editor's going to cut it out, but I'll do it. So I ended up, I would have to do like I'd have to disguise a noisy nose puff, or like my mouth would be slightly closed, and I would just, I'd try to freeze my mouth so you don't see air coming out. So it was like super technical. And then of course they give you all this jargon to say, so. But yeah, that apparatus thing was a pain in the ass, and they were so sweet about it. And I couldn't turn a certain way. They could only shoot me from a direction, because if you saw down into it, the bit would be blown. You'd see little dry ice rocks sitting in there that he put in with a tweezer between takes.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
Time elapsed. You now have 1 hour free before the next test.
I must admit, Wesley, you have a very fast mind.
Once I realized it was a trick question, there was only one answer.
Yes. There is only one ratio with matter-antimatter. 1 to 1.
You both don't know how lucky you are. I can't imagine what it would be like to have things come so easily. I have to push every step of the way.
Oh, no, Oleana, it doesn't come that easily. I have to study all the time.
It's a good thing you're cute, Wesley, or you could really be obnoxious. See you later.
Did you hear what she said, Mordock? She said I was cute.
Is that good, Wesley?
Yes. I think.
Trekking along here with Lily on A Captain's Log. We're joined this week and next week by the talented director and actor John Putch.
Ooh, yes. We're going back to the Starfleet entrance exams in the Season 1 Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Coming of Age. Yes. Another question for you on this first appearance in Trek.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Okay, so after actor Daniel Reardon, who plays Rondon, wearing the Starfleet yellow shirt, runs into Wesley Crusher in the hallway, you scratch your head as if puzzled that Xalians have webbed fingers and that you wouldn't have passed, then you're scoffing. You really add a lot to this alien to make it more believable with like scoffing and the air intake and even scratching your little forehead. What do you remember about this scene in Coming of Age? And if you can share a behind-the-scenes memory between you 3 Starfleet students, we would love that.
The reason I would do that is because they asked me to show the extra thumb appliance that they put on my hand. And now that it totally makes sense. You know, they want to see the rest of the makeup. So, you know, I said, well, how about I just, you know, go to do this? Because they're never showing my hands unless they show the insert when we're taking the test. That had to be why. I'm telling you, it is. There's no other reason.
Well, BK, we've gone where no Benzite has gone before with John Putch. Next week in part 2, we'll talk about his second and quite different personality Benzite character.
Yes, that's Min Don, who dons a Starfleet uniform from Season 2's Next Generation episode of Matter of Honor. Now, it's been our honor to interview you, John, and share this with you fans.
Bye for now.
To a human I can depend on to bring me happy. Ooh. Thank you.